backstory into why I wanted to potentially look into this option and not necessarily just put all of my eggs in the science basket is because it started to feel more like corporate America for me than it was the passion that I used to have for science. And I realized once I started reading these books that I was just chasing the corporate ladder. I was just making my way up through higher management tiers. And that's not really where I wanted to be. And once I started to see traction with real estate, I was like, man, this is a potential that I could walk away from this life as a scientist, which came with some politics, and I always was managed. People were telling me where I needed to be and when, to this lifestyle of freedom, right? Where I could do what I want when I wanted. And that was tantalizing, right? And I think that was definitely in the backdrop, but I definitely wasn't ready to like leave the career.
Got it.
But I wanted another rental, right? It made sense. I was like, okay, this is sweet.
So you have your primary and a rental now.
I have my primary and a rental.
You're still working.
Still working, but I have no more money, right? So I home equity line of credit, I use that to buy the rental.
Like a down payment, leverage with the bank loan of some sort? Okay.
Exactly. And then I was like, crap, it's going to take me a long time to save up this money and do it again. And I did it traditionally. I didn't know much more at the time about how you could purchase rentals for different entry points. So I bought it 20% down.
Good. Yeah.
And I was like, man, I got to figure out how to do this again. And I was like, man, what's one way that I could get capital quickly? I was like, I should flip a house, right? I hear this on Bigger Pockets all the time. If I flip a house, I can make that money. I can buy another rental. And the market was going straight up. So it made sense, right? I was like, I'm totally going to do this. This is where Azreia comes in, right? So I get this idea of I want to flip a house. I'm talking to this realtor who helped me with the rental. Her name is Melanie Johnston. She's amazing. I found her on Bigger Pockets, and she was like, dude, you know Melanie? Yeah. Melanie's like, you got to go to Azreia. Like, I know you're new in the game. I'm always trying. I'm always willing to be coached because you know I found that even in the world of science, and I was pretty good at what I did. If I could get taken under somebody's wing and they would help me, I always felt like I was able to gain a lot more knowledge quickly. And so Melanie kind of took me under her wing.
Awesome.
She's worked with a lot of investors, and she's like, you've got to go to Azreia, check it out. Here's the thing. Being a PhD trained cancer biologist, I'm naturally introverted, right? And people don't believe this when I tell them. Like, I get energy when I'm alone. Like when I do events like this, or I'm out in a seminar or a conference, like I'm drained. I need a whole nother day to like process that, get back to normal. So like I didn't like to do those type of events, but Melanie said I needed to go, so I went. So here I am, Azreia, first night. It's the it's the monthly meeting. Tons of people in the room. They're all talking real estate. At this point, I've read the books. I've listened to the podcast. I feel like I'm beginning to understand the lingo.
You did it.
Okay.
I did it. I'm there, right?
You did.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got one rental behind my my belt. Like I'm here. I deserve to be here. And I get in the room. There's a lot of people. And I was like, dang, this is a lot of information quickly. I think Tina Tambor was talking about market updates, and I am a data guy, so I was intrigued, but at the same time, I was a little intimidated. So I was like, man, I should go grab a drink from the bar. Like, I just need to like chill my nerves.
Yeah, good idea.
And we were in Scottsdale at the time, so I did. I went over to the bar and I grabbed a drink, and I'm sitting down and I'm like just trying to process everything that's happening. And there's this person sitting next to me, her and her husband, and we get to talking. And Nancy and Raul Navarro, who are big time Azreia investors. I had no idea who these people were, but I was telling them my story about how I got here, and I just bought my first rental, and I want to do my first flip. Same thing. They just took me under their wing, and they're like, man, you need to like spend more time with us. And so I kept going to Azreia. I kept hanging out with Nancy and Raul. They took me under their wing. I got my first flip like maybe a month later. And Nancy and Raul were there. They were walking the flip with me.
Raul's a contractor, right? They have a contracting company.
So they're flippers, but they have their own contracting teams.
Yes.
So they've got like 3 or 4 teams that work for them.
Okay.
And so and Raul and Nancy are just like an extreme amount of knowledge. Like we walked the flip. I gave them an idea of what my layout was going to look like. They gave me some pointers, showed me what I needed to look out for, things I had never even noticed before in my life, right? Because these guys are professionals. And that's kind of how like flipping started for me. And I did everything wrong on that flip. I did almost all the work myself. I hired out what I could.
I think we talked about this one at the cigar bar.
Yeah.
Is this the one you went? You didn't do the neighborhood finishes.
Right, I did.
Tell us about that.
This is the one. So I did everything wrong, man. There were so many comps in the neighborhood that I could have followed. I didn't. I was kind of doing my own thing, right? I was trying to follow sort of some of the information that I was getting ancillary to what Raul and Nancy were telling me. And I was new in this game. When you're doing all the work yourself and you're working in the business and not necessarily on the business at that stage, I feel like you make a lot of mistakes, and that's what happened, right? I did a lot of finishes that maybe somebody else wouldn't have done. I also did a lot of things that probably experienced flippers wouldn't have done. Like I took all the walls down. I was like, this is HGTV. I got to make this thing stick, right?
Yeah, swinging a sledgehammer.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, I got to make this thing so nice. I redid like plumbing, all the new electrical. Like we did so much work to this house that we didn't need to do. It took 6 months. but the market was so hot that it was successful, right? The market was so hot, I still made 30 G's, and I'm like, this is sick. Even though I did everything wrong, right? The market was too good to fail. And so I convinced myself, hey, I want to flip houses, right? Like I'm making money. And then I continued down that trajectory, and I'll sort of shorten that timeline. But
so let me ask you this real quick, Cecil. When you got that $30,000 check, right? And you don't have to tell us exactly what you did with it, but what was your end goal? What did you do with that $30,000 when you made that money?
I just put it right back in the business.
Okay.
I did. Honestly, I didn't
flip or
to flip.
Okay.
To flip, yeah.
And the reason why I asked you that is because when you first got started, you said you wanted to take the money from flipping to buy more rentals.
Right.
So you took that money and just kept flipping.
And the reason is because again, at the time, I didn't know that I could buy rentals for less than 20% down.
Gotcha.
And so here I am thinking, oh, I made 30 grand, but it's not enough to buy another one.
Got it.
So I need to flip another house. While I'm doing this, I'm still working full time as a scientist. So I'm doing the work, right? I'm 9 to 5 scientist role. And then I'm going and doing this flip at the, late at night and well into the mornings. But I think this is important because like people see where I'm at now, which is not too much further from where I was then, but not much has changed. I still get up at 5 o'clock every single morning, which is what I was doing 2-3 years ago. And from 5 in the morning to 8 in the morning, before I had to start my shift, I was studying and I was learning and I was reading. And it was that knowledge that I applied to this business model, which I think has really helped me. But yeah, I convinced myself I wanted to do a flip, but I learned a few things on that project. I learned, one, there were a lot of things that I did wrong, right? Which was probably the most important thing from that first flip. But two, I learned that I didn't really want to work with contractors on a one-on-one basis. Like there was components of the business that I really liked, and there were components that I wanted to outsource. And I think that was the big like moment for me realizing, hey, I can bring somebody on to manage that portion of the business, and I can focus on the things that I wanted to focus on.
Okay.
What
And so
did you like to focus on?
I was more deal acquisitions. I like the strategy.
Okay. Okay. You're not talking about renovations. You're
No.
talking Okay.
I like number crunching. I like finding the deal.
Okay.
I feel like a hustler.
Okay.
And so I wanted somebody to manage the renovations. And so my brother has 10 years of management experience, but in the restaurant industry. But he can communicate with these construction crews well better than I can. I think we're just operating on different levels. And so I reached out to my brother Chris, and I was like, hey man, we have always talked about.
He wasn't in Arizona.
No, he was. Oh, he was. He was in Prescott Valley.
To get him here. Where was he?
He was in Prescott Valley.
Oh, okay. That's right. Got it.
Yeah. So he was in Prescott Valley, and I'm like, hey man, I think we've got something here with the fix and flip business. The market's really hot. Mind you, this is before interest rates spiked. And I was like, you should join me on this journey. And he was like, I'm game. So he left his career in restaurant management, and we decided to start our own company, like 50-50 partners, and just fully dive into this business. If I wasn't in the right room at the right time, I think like getting to that, speaking with Nancy and Raul and realizing, and they even said this, which was the really cool thing. They said, man, you know what you're talking about after only having done one deal. Because in that conversation, we were talking about taxes, and they're like, how do you know about this? And I'm a pretty avid reader, so I feel like I could talk the lingo maybe a little bit more than I knew at the time. And I think that gave me some confidence. I mean, I think still to this day, everyone struggles with a little bit of imposter syndrome here and there. Me, certainly in bigger events when I'm trying to, I spend a lot of time with people who are doing a lot bigger business than me. Like that's where I want to be. And naturally, I find myself being like, man, I don't know how I'm sitting in the room with some of these guys. Like I do have that still, but I think I believe in myself, and I've always been that way. When I come up with a plan and I want to do something, I always put myself in front of it and I say, well, if there's anyone who can do this, I can do it. And I think it's important to lean into uncomfortability. And that's a big motto for me. Like if there's anything that I could probably like stand on that's been like that's brought me the most success is like, I do lean into uncomfortability. Like there's a fine line between being nervous and being excited and being anxious. And I think the difference is confidence. And some of the times I just lack the confidence. So I'm like, man, just get through it. And like, you're going to come out on the other side confident. And the next time you'll be excited instead of anxious. So like, that's big for me.